Today's show was meant to be a review of the Australian Grand Prix, but fate and the coronavirus has denied us that chance. Instead, we're going to give a rundown of what exactly happened in the F1 paddock and try to figure out where the sport will go from here. Welcome back to the Formula One Grid Talk podcast, potentially the last show for some time now. We are powered by the F1 Chronicle. Visit f1chronicle.com for news, reviews, and opinions on all things F1. Hosting us today will be me, George Howson, and joining me today are sports journalist Louis Edwards,
Hello.
engineering student Owain Medford,
Hello.
and master of engineering Jack Watson.
Hiya.
You love that title, don't you? Hey, I'd take it all the way to the bank, literally. You should be getting more money than what you have for that qualification. All right, so like I said, the coronavirus has struck sport in general, and Formula One is no exemption. I mean, it was a delayed reaction from F1, you could say, but it was inevitable, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, those talks for ages that this was going to happen, and well, eventually it did. But they did take their sweet time in making the decision. Literally hours before free practice one was going to start, did they actually decide to cancel it? We were all on a bit of a wild goose chase trying to figure out what was going on. But yeah, it was, in the end, it was the right decision to cancel.
Yeah, definitely the right decision to cancel. But Owain, it should have been made a lot sooner because, like Louis said, it was literally, 2 or 3 hours before FP1 was meant to start. The official call was given.
Yeah, I mean, the fans were queuing, the marshals were at the track, the team personnel were there. You know, it was good to go, essentially. And obviously, at the last minute, the FIA's called it off. I think it's a completely delayed reaction. Still slightly better than other times that this has happened in F1's history, but still, it's far, far too late, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to think about the fans as well, Jack, because, you know, they've travelled around the world, like British fans have gone halfway around the world to go to Australia for this. And, you know, being told to the last minute to make it more dangerous for them as well, potentially catch it, that there's no racing. It's amazing, really. It took them so long.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like fans were already turning up, as you say, from Thursday. Those who were fans of V8 supercars would have been there the entire day for their qualifying racing. And yeah, to then turn up Friday morning to get your seats and be told, no, you're going to have to go away. Like, one way or another, whether it had gone ahead through behind closed doors or, as it turns out, was the right decision to cancel altogether, it was still messing around with the fans in a very dangerous way, especially like, we had a confirmed case. We had several others under quarantine. Like, it shouldn't have been messing around that. Like, I understand why there was delays, but even so, a bit of clarity wouldn't have gone amiss.
Yeah, definitely. It's not quite Indy 2005, but in terms of just the late decision making, it wasn't too much better.
It's one step above. One step. I'm glad we've made one step in 15 years.
God bless Liberty Media. But yeah, it is quite farcical it took that long. I mean, that is a point that Jack raised, though, Louis. You know, could it potentially gone on behind closed doors, albeit with 9 teams out of 10?
No, I think it's hugely unfair on McLaren because it's something that's out of their control. It's not like they've, chosen to not turn up for this race. It's that they've turned up, and due to circumstances, they weren't going to be able to race, out of the safety of everyone else in the paddock. The FIA said that it's all teams or no teams, and for a while it looked like they were just going to go ahead with it anyway. But I think it was definitely right that the race didn't go on behind closed doors. But perhaps they could have maybe done some free practice sessions or something, just get some track action. But I think in any case, it's still any other track action would have been unfair on McLaren because it's data that the other teams can get, which McLaren will lose out on.
Yeah, it's so competitive in the midfield, or at least we anticipate being really close to midfield, just like last year. So McLaren, getting off to, not even able to compete in the first race, it did seem a bit unfair. And obviously, with hundreds of thousands of people being there over the race weekend, it could have been a disaster. It could have been, and then they could have just spread it around the world. Because the thing with coronavirus is that it takes 5 days potentially for your symptoms to show. So you could think you're fine, but you're actually not, and you can spread it in that time. So it's a really dangerous thing. And a lot of other sports obviously done the same. The football around the world's pretty much cancelled. other motorsport series like IndyCar cancelled, even the golf and stuff like that. It's all been just postponed and everything. It's like nothing we've seen in our lifetimes, Owain. This is the biggest disruption to sports since the Second World War.
Well, I'll put it this way: I've never seen the things like the Premier League postponed ever. They've always plodded on. I've never seen Formula One cancel races even in the middle of the Arab Spring. That's happened once, and it was significantly further out than we've had now. I hate to say it, I kind of expect a tone-deaf response from Formula One to these sorts of things. I expected the bushfires to have lasted longer, and I expected Formula One to be tone-deaf with 20 highly polluting Formula One cars, driving around bushfires. I fully expected that, and I was kind of proved right. I think we've got very, very close to running in the middle of a health crisis.
Yeah, it was literally hours away potentially. It's something. It's definitely something. And yeah, like we said, the Australian Grand Prix is officially cancelled. I've had a look online. The Bahrain Grand Prix, the Chinese Grand Prix, and the Vietnamese Grand Prix are all not cancelled. They're all officially postponed. So they are wanting to get them in later in the year. But realistically, Jack, that's not going to happen, is it really?
Well, assuming that it's hard to say. It depends how many races into the European season we get cancelled. Optimistically, you're looking at starting at Zandvoort. More realistically, it's probably Baku. If you want to get an 18-race season, the summer break is only 4 weeks long. There's only so many that we can squeeze in there. And also, teams will start arguing against more triple headers than is reasonable. I mean, we have other series that have pushed down those barriers and just set races like that anyway. I think MotoGP has 2 triple headers back to back. But with the amount of power that the teams have, it's hard to see a situation like that arising, because if they feel their personnel are going to be something like that is going to be pushed too hard, they can veto it. So it is going to be hard. We're not going to be anywhere near the full calendar, but we will have races lobbying as to why they will want to be included in this deeply shortened calendar.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I mean, it is potentially physically possible to fit these races in later in the year, but realistically, with the veto power the teams have, it's not going to happen. And also the travel as well to these countries, it's such a big risk, because teams like, I know Ferrari have shut their doors, Louis, and I imagine quite a few other teams have done the same thing too. So development's just stopped.
Yeah, it's a weird time, and it's a weird sort of situation to know how this sort of sport can continue sort of just the way it is. With Ferrari shutting down doors, I think the FIA could have just then made it mandatory for all teams to shut their doors, just so Ferrari aren't, completely losing out on not being able to develop their car. Because I imagine other teams are taking this opportunity maybe somewhat to develop the current car or even the 2021 car. So yeah, it's unfortunate that it's what it's coming down to, but I think it is pretty necessary. If Ferrari are having to lock down their factory, then maybe other teams should be doing the same.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know if any other team has locked their doors, to be honest with you. I heard a rumour that Mercedes have closed their high power performance HPP lab, but I don't know about the rest of the facility. And I don't know about the other teams either, Owain, but Lou raises a very good point there. That it's, it kind of sucks in a way, but this kind of crisis does produce opportunities for other teams, and the other teams will take the opportunity to develop their cars if they can.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. If I was any team that's not, the Ferrari or the Ferrari-powered teams, because let's not forget that it's not just car development, it's not just aero development that goes on at Maranello, it's also the engine development as well. So you're going to have Haas being potentially affected, you're going to have Alfa Romeo potentially being affected. They're going to lose. Ferrari could end up losing their lead on the power train side just because of this, not being able to get any research done. I think if I was, Formula One is ruthless. We know that. You take any advantage you can get. So I imagine that the other 7 teams are probably laughing, at the amount of sort of free development time that they're getting. And I do have to think that Ferrari's got a lot of power with the FIA, in my opinion, at least. They've got to be talking to them. I think we could conceivably see a scenario where if this goes on much longer, they might just decide it's actually better to can the 2020 season, because it's kind of felt to me like a stopgap season, but I think they might can the 2020 season and go to the 2021 if it goes on for a significant amount of time. I mean, it's a bold move, I am aware.
It's potentially there's a lot of fans and event organisers that are going to disagree with that, though. They're going to want to put on a show if they can.
It's a hell of a lot of money. I totally understand that, and obviously they paid their race fee, and the FAA would have to make good on that. But if we're thinking, I think the current estimates on coronavirus is that it's going to take 10 to 14 weeks to hit its peak, and then 10 to 14 weeks to come back down again. I personally, I think that would take us to sort of midway through the season. And at that point, is there any point carrying on with 2020?
Potentially not. I mean, it depends who you ask. I mean, it's worse now in Europe, arguably, than Asia. The World Health Organization has said that Europe is the epicenter of this outbreak now. Now, the first European race we said is the Dutch Grand Prix. That is scheduled to be the first race of the season. Mikhail, who's on the show, he lives in the Netherlands, and he says that the locals there expect it to hit its peak in 2 to 3 weeks, but that's kind of going against what a lot of people say. A lot of people say it's going to take until June, which takes us to sort of Baku time. And being a relatively isolated country, you think Azerbaijan might be able to get away with it. But I think even then, Jack, if it were to race in Azerbaijan, it would be behind closed doors.
Almost certainly, mainly because the teams themselves become the most liable risk. And we might have a similar situation as it was with Australia, where Melbourne is quite unaffected comparatively by this virus. And as you say, with Azerbaijan being a bit more isolated, it's more likely to be in that case as well. But we've got 3 teams at least based in Italy. Just 4 or 5 in England? I should know this off by heart.
There's a bit more, but there's quite a few. Everybody's based in Europe, so
it's all based in Europe. Even Haas have got quite large centres in Europe. So we then, as Europeans, will become the more likely vectors, and we'll be more likely to bring it over to the quieter areas. So segregating fans away from the track will probably be more on that case rather than to protect F1 from the virus.
Yeah, definitely. It becomes the fans in danger. Sorry, the fans being a danger to the sport rather than the sport being a danger to the fans. But it does go both ways, of course. I mean, it's hard to say when the season will begin. I mean, I think realistically, Louis, we're looking at the shortest season in terms of overall races since the 1960s at best.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I am kind of hoping that Baku will be the first race, even, because, having, Spain have going on lockdown now, so any chance of it starting in May, either at Zandvoort, sort of Catalonia, or even Monaco is relatively small, I would say. And then, yeah, I am hoping that Baku, but the thing is, if it runs on like after the summer break, we're talking that we're going to be starting the season, in Hungary or Belgium. I think that's when it's sort of, I kind of agree with Owain. It's just, it gets like pointless after a while of whether we need to do 10 race season. I think they have to try and endeavour to get as many races on the calendar as possible. That is, can be agreed upon and is realistic in terms of logistics, just so that we can have, the best possible season.
Yeah, it does kind of get to the point potentially where it's like, what's the point in running races? But at the end of the day, these teams have poured hundreds of millions of pounds into these cars. They've spent all this time in the winter developing, all the years before that leading up to this, developing the car. I think they should do as many races as they can, but they have to be safe about it. They have to balance it. And that's a really, really difficult thing. I do not envy the race organisers with this at all. It's a very, very tricky one. For all sports as well, it's, F1's not immune from this. It's absolutely unprecedented. I've never known anything like this, just in general. It's who thought we would, in pre-season testing, who thought we were going to be talking about this after what should have been the first race? It's absolutely bizarre scenario. It really is. But there has been some racing action, some virtual racing action. There was not the Australian Grand Prix, which is hosted by Veloce, the company set up by Jean-Eric Verne. And I need to get the results of this, but there was some there were some big names in there. Lando Norris competed. I think Stoffel Van Dorn too. Some YouTube stars, Timo Marduk, Arava, Tom97 HD. And then some stars from outside of F1 as well. Thibaut Courtois, the Real Madrid goalkeeper, he was getting on the action too. And I think, Owain, that's the best we can really do. I mean, if we can't host an actual race, we'll host a virtual one because eSports is so big now.
It's sort of provided a new way to kind of provide that entertainment. I'm amazed at the sort of the quick response from some of the big stars from Formula One. You know, Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. They sim race quite frequently anyway. So it was. I don't know if they were in this race or whether they were in another event, but I remember a number of these popped up, and it was good to see. Actually, it was a shame I couldn't watch it at the time, and I'll probably go back and look over it just to see what happened, just out of a sort of curiosity. But it's nice actually to see some Formula One stars and also the racing community kind of banding around what we can do versus what we can't do. So it would have been very easy to just go, oh well, bum weekend, but we had people putting on events. So, the 12 hours of Sebring. A 12 hours of Sebring event. We had obviously these two other esports events, and at the same time that Steam was getting 20 million concurrent people, which is the highest number ever. I think this is, that's promising for what can be done. There may come a time at some point where we've seen with the Gran Turismo Academy and things like that, we might actually get to a point where we're not running races outdoors anymore.
Yeah, it's getting like that, isn't it? I mean, I did an article the other week about how the F1 game could potentially be launched before the official season starts. That looks like it's going to happen now, but not for the reasons we expected. But yeah, they'll be continuing this. I think Veloce have already announced that they'll be doing a not the Bahrain Grand Prix, haven't they, Jack? And there's also another big race this weekend in the eSports.
Yeah, so where it's worked out, you've got Veloce running their not the enter name here GP season. They're planning to continue on for the foreseeable, as far as I know. I don't know if it's a consistent entry list with the teams they already have lined up, or if they're going to get different invitationals in and just run it as they go. But we'll wait and see on that. As you say, next one will be in Bahrain. We also have The Race, a fairly new publication. They also were running a alternative, getting together well-known real-world drivers and sim drivers in the same sort of aspect, running a series of short sprint races, and top 8 from each go through into a grand final. And it seems like they will also be continuing. So in light of F1 leaving us temporarily, we now have 2 F1-based championships in replacement, which I think is brilliant. I mean, some of the viewership was insane. We had Lando Norris' stream on Not the Oz GP scoring over 100,000 views at one point, and the races coverage of their organisation has cleared 1 million. It's insane.
Yeah, it's amazing to see, isn't it? So even in these times where this, the professional, well, I'm going to say professional, the physical sports are unable to be played because of this, there's the virtual ones, the esports, and it's amazing to see. It's, long may it continue. I mean, Louis, has there been any word on the official F1 esports? Is that cancelled now? I know it's quite close to the end of the F1 2019 life cycle. Has there been any kind of word on what's going to happen with that? Or
I've heard nothing so far, but when it comes to the esports event, actually, all the qualifying takes place on the actual game. So you sort of stay. So it would be people in their homes qualifying for the events. But whether or not they'll actually do the live events in London is probably to be seen when we get there, sort of how the situation is. So I'm sure the qualifying will probably take place once the 2020 game comes out. I think we've seen the last of actual F1 esports on the 2019 game. Yeah,
so we'll have to see what happens when the 2020 game comes out. But of course, they can play it at home. They can do their own connection. But imagine if you disconnected with that. Imagine if you disconnected in the final. That would be the controller through the TV kind of moment.
I think we had someone who did.
Yeah.
I know we had Neil Yarni run out of fuel in his one.
Yeah.
Quite ironic for an L1 driver.
Yeah, Lando crashed the entire Australian GP.
It's fun to watch, man.
Spoiler alert. No,
This is like they were like midway through the first qualifying attempt, and Lando completely crashes everyone out of it. So they have to restart.
Had to restart the server.
Man like Lando. You could take him out of Formula One, but he's still a joker. What a man.
I do like the fact that we're actually, there's a certain amount of crossover. Like, I'd quite like to see other drivers from like other sports, or like Tom Christensen versus Max Verstappen. I want to see that.
Well, we did. I mean, you in the not the GP, you had the goalkeeper for Real Madrid. He was in there.
Was he any good?
He's
actually
fast.
He was good.
He is rapid. And then in the other one, we've got Rosenquist, Yanni, Gunter, Danny Incadea, Felix, Antonio Felix da Costa, and that's just to name a few. Like it's really got some draw on it.
Not Australian Grand Prix. I'd like Louis Delatraz, Stoffel Van Dorn, Esteban Gutierrez also driving. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. And then you had Will N.E., which was
Yeah. Oh man, it's just it's just amazing, isn't it? It's just like it's this kind of scenario that you might think could just never happen, but it's happened, and it's that's one positive at least. We get something a bit different, but obviously, we're out here to talk about the Formula One, and there's no Formula One to talk about. We'll try and get Chris and Phil and someone else I've been in contact with as well. They've all been on the ground. They've all, they were there at the Australian Grand Prix, the actual one, what should have been the actual one. I want to get what they experienced down there. But other than that, unless there's like a big shock driver announcement, which I severely doubt at this stage of the season.
The closest bit of news we had from them, unfortunately, was that they did have to stay up all night, as most of the Formula One journalist community had to, and I quote, hilariously little sleep. And I think that's probably, I don't want to go back to it, but it's just a poor decision by the FIA. I'm glad that Lewis Hamilton used his position to say, "I'm shocked we're here. Why are we here?" Because we've heard drivers say in the past, "We trust the FIA to make the right decision." I'm glad in some cases that McLaren, Lewis Hamilton have come out and said, we're just not doing this.
It's good to see. It's good to see him take a stance on it at the end of the day. And I think as well, I don't know if it's confirmed or not, but we heard rumours about Kimi Räikkönen and Sebastian Vettel leaving before the practice even started. They just had enough. They both left.
I think they had.
Yeah, they had.
I think it was pretty certain that they had.
So
it was kind of their own move.
Yeah, so that's down to 16 drivers right there. So yeah. And apparently there was a vote as well. I heard there was a vote between the teams, like 5 said to race and 5 said not to race, which is kind of disappointing, really, given what happened.
Yeah, but then Daimler got involved and basically said, "We'll leave it up to you, Toto." But I mean, come on. So after that, all the Mercedes teams backed that, and that pretty much from then on it would have, from what I've read anyway, that was how it played out, and I'm sure our guys on the ground will have a lot more detail for us.
There'll be a lot of stories about it, yeah. I mean, you'd like to think they'll be free enough to talk about it now. They're not quite as busy as they thought they were going to be. But we'll see. They are busy people. I would like to hear what happened, though, because it's such an unusual scenario. Imagine going halfway around the world, all the anticipation of this first race of the season, and you don't even know if it's going to be happening. And you have to stay up all night just waiting it out, giving updates whenever you can. I mean, I think it was AlphaTauri, Toro Rosso, they were... they had half the team there were like ready to go, and the other half were like ready to pack up. They didn't know what was going to happen. They had no clue what was going to happen. It's such a bizarre scenario. And obviously as well, the Italy factor too. Italy's the worst for it outside of China, and there's 3 teams or 2 teams that are based in Italy. Haas partly based in Italy.
2 based in Italy, half based in Italy, and then there's a bit more as well. Obviously, but there's more impacted, obviously, because you got the 3 teams that are powered by Ferrari.
Put simply, we don't know what's going to happen. We have no clue what's going to happen. Nobody else does. We can hope there's going to be a race soon, but realistically, can't see it. I'll be surprised if we race in Baku. I think that's the first proper opportunity, but if failing that, then I don't know, maybe Hungary. I don't know how many cases they've got in Hungary, but it's quite bad in continental Europe in general. So we'll see how that all evolves.
I do have a question to ask. I was going to say, do you think we're going to have issues with rescheduling all of these these large sporting events that are all going to want their share of airtime, and try and obviously put on some kind of event, in 2020. We've got the Olympics coming up and things like that. I think it's kind of going to become increasingly difficult to reschedule these postponed events, and I'm not actually sure that we'll be able to do it in the last half of this year. It seems like it's going to be the only time it's available.
Well, I've heard and read that the Japanese Prime Minister is incredibly confident that they will be able to host the Olympics this year, but may not be international fans or selected international sort of countries that will be able to attend, depending on their sort of status at the time. I mean, football is screwed unless UEFA actually pull their finger out and decide to delay the Euros, because they've still yet to even do that. And I think if they don't at least suspend the Euros for like a year, the football calendar is messed up.
I've just thought, isn't the Euros held across the continent this year as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like it could be problematic at least.
But at least it gives them options on what countries they can host it in. But yeah, obviously there's Italy, France, Spain. They're all hosting games. Germany, they're all in lockdown. They're going to have to delay the Euros by a year. I'm hearing that they're going to delay the Olympics until October, but I've heard then that the issue becomes that all these athletes train to hit their physical peak in the summer, every 4 years. Obviously, if you move that, then they're not going to be at the peak, but they can compete. So, I don't know, it's a
bit hard to tell. Right, but Japan itself has been quite bullish over this anyway. Like, in terms of the motorsport stuff, they're still sticking to their guns. So, I don't think they want to... It's almost like a show of strength. They want to prove that like they're not affected by it. Like you say with the Olympics, like even that October move is quite heavily resisted. So they're a bit hard to tell, but they're also keeping very quiet on how they're actually affected. So we'll have to wait. That's very much a wait and see situation.
Yeah, I mean, we had the Zika virus scare in Brazil for the last Olympics, but this is on another scale because it's airborne and it doesn't show up for so long. So I mean, yeah, like Louis was saying as well, the football season's just screwed pretty much because nobody knows what's going to happen with that. They're going to have to delay the Euros by a year. They're going to have to push it back to 2021. But as for the domestic football, who knows? I think it's quite likely we're going to have empty stadiums to finish the season, or they'll call it as it is and do it on points per game, which would suit my team down to the ground. But obviously, it's a much bigger picture than that. Let's be honest here.
I don't believe in God, but coronavirus happening the moment that Liverpool get 30 points ahead.
And Leeds are about to be promoted as well. Yeah, it seems. If only we had Alex on the show, I don't think he would have liked that comment.
We're just getting ranting in the comments.
Yeah, he's gonna quit. He's gonna quit the podcast.
I mean, all we can say is that we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. It's all up in the air. We're like everyone else and monitoring it as we go. You just got to try and stay as safe as possible.
Yeah, but what do you think, listener? Viewer? What do you think is going to happen? You can send in the comments below. You can tweet us as well, because it's anybody's guess really. It could literally be absolutely anything. This is something that we've never had before. Like, it's very rare that races even get postponed or cancelled. Like, I remember, Bahrain 2011, it's the Arab Spring.
Japanese Grand Prix last year with a typhoon.
And even then they tried to push through it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's very rare it happens. It's never happened for this before, so we'll see.
Your guess is literally as good as ours.
Pretty much. As usual, to be fair.
Because our predictions give very good evidence.
Yeah, unless anybody wants to say anything else, I think that might be it for the Coronacast. So
the Coronacast.
We've got to title it something. We can't title it Australian Grand Prix Review because it's not happened, has it? This is the Coronacast, episode 24, or whatever it is.
But
what could have been? So yeah, Lewis Hamilton could have won this weekend, but. Oh man! So yeah,
I've already put Lewis Hamilton at 25 points. It's all good.
26, man. Come on, be realistic. Give me the fastest lap point. But yeah, so unfortunately, this may well be the last show until at least May. We will keep you updated, of course, on the F1 Chronicle. Be sure to check out the website for that. Check out the Twitter feed and the Facebook as well. We are also available on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Music. Big up Apple Music as well. Most of our listeners come from there. And yeehaw to all the American listeners as well. Most of our listeners do come from the US. We've been smashing the listening figures as well. Well over 600 now per episode, which is amazing to see. And of course, the F1 season is postponed when we seem to be doing so well. But we'll be back, don't worry. We'll be back when the sport is back. We're also on Omni Studio and Pocket Cast. Search for the Formula One Grid Talk for those. We are on Reddit as well. We are new. Just search for new F1 podcasts, looking for feedback if you want to give some feedback. Obviously, it'll probably take a long time to implement any said feedback, but we'll do our best. And we have a Patreon as well, Formula One Grid Talk, if you want to pay for some new lights or mics or cameras as well. So that is all the things we've got to talk about. And yeah, so we don't know when we're going to be back next. We will let you know, like we said. Thank you to everybody for downloading and subscribing to the show as well. We really do appreciate it. It's amazing how big a support we've got in such little time as well. It's amazing seeing the subscriber counts just go up. I think we're over 300 now on all platforms, which is just fantastic to see, really. But yes, thank you, lads. Thank you for being on here today.
No problem.
Thank you.
Absolutely no problem.
And yes, we will be back whenever there's a Formula One race to report or we get a story from the people on the ground. Thank you very much for listening. Be sure to check out our back catalogue as well. We've got over 20 episodes for you to enjoy if you want to go through the best and worst races and the best and the worst of the drivers from last year. We've got several shows about that as well. But yes, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.